Shall we call the meeting to order? Will you be calling the roll?
Mr. Shannon?
Here.
Ms. Dobbs? Not here. Okay. Mr. Welsh? Here. Mr. Capuzzi? Here. Mr. Berdamondo?
Close enough.
Close enough. Mr. Monstrassi? Sorry.
Montresor here.
Montressor, sorry. And Ms. Phillips?
Here.
Thank you.
Let's all stand for the salute. Pledge. Pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just wanted to make a brief announcement. First, thank you all for coming out tonight. And I just wanted to mention, I've sent around these notices from the Pennsylvania Municipal Planning Education Institute. There's still a few coming up. There's an April 30th and June 17th, either one, on managing the subdivision review process. I'm going to try to make one of those because I feel that's the area that gets the most technical and would be the most help to hear what the Pennsylvania Continuing Legal Education Board presents. Also, the price is $25 and the township has said they are happy to reimburse us for any expenses. So if you go and pay, if you register and pay, keep a receipt and the township will reimburse the $25. There's also one on building a strong planning commission, but we have a strong planning commission. But one can always learn. That's on May 13th. The subdivision review process is April 30 and June 17. That said, let's turn to the first agenda item. Or second, the Glenair Country Club sketch plan. Jim?
Hey, Mr. Shannon and members of the board. My name's Jim Byrne. I don't know that I've met everybody on the board, but I've met most of you at one time or another. I was the solicitor here for about 15 years, a couple of years ago, so I have met a lot of the people here. And Mr. Shannon's right. You do have a very strong planning commission. I like coming here to planning commission that is knowledgeable. Sometimes you go to towns and people are asking you crazy questions that have nothing to do with what is going on, but
We never do that.
people in Haverford are very fortunate to have such a good planning commission. The other thing that the people of Haverford Town are very fortunate of is to have such good golf courses. I mean, you have two of the premier golf courses probably in Pennsylvania, maybe even throughout the country. Tonight I'm here representing Lanark Country Club, Golf Club, which is right down the road a piece. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. We're here tonight, and on your agenda it says that we're here about improving the property, and that is what we're doing by way of brief description. We're going to try and enhance the pool area because the pool is kind of older and outdated and needs to be brought up to times. While we're doing that, we're going to address some parking needs and really not needs, because if you've been to the site, and I'm sure most of you have been, the whole site is self-contained, so that all the parking and everything is inside the country club itself. There is no parking on side streets. We don't have any problems like that. We are increasing the number of parking spots, however, I believe by 4 additional spots. And we're also going to make some tweaks to our driving range. So I have here with me tonight a couple members of the team that I'd like to introduce, if I could. Chris Wilkerson, who's the general manager of the club, and then John Giangiulio, who's the president of the club, and then we have Jim Bannon, who is our engineer. So I think it probably would be more appropriate to call Chris or John up to explain what the plans are, because they have a better familiarity with what is planned than I do. But we'll certainly answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Let's see if Jeff has this set up. Go to the pictures. Good. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is John Giangiulio, and I am the president of the Leonard Country Club. And Chris Wilkinson and I have been working on a program with our members for about 2 years. What we internally call this our master campus plan. And it really is to serve three main objectives for the club. Importantly, it's going to replace current infrastructure that is at our club today, that is simply aged out. Two, we would be able to increase safety on the campus. And then three, while we're going through all of this, we are looking at the idea to enhance those facilities for the members and their guests and family. So the first objective, there's so much of this that is simply deferred maintenance, but even if you regularly take care of your property, at some point, you still have to spend CapEx, and you still have to replace. And that's really where we are. The pool is 70 years old. It has a useful life of 50 years. We have no real concerns that it's not structurally sound, but at the same time, we don't want to have that kind of issue come up in the future, and it's time to replace it at this age. Our parking lot hasn't been repaved in over 30 years. Again, it's time for this infrastructure to be replaced. The elements, those make up a significant part of the activities. The safety as objective number two, we really want to increase the lighting on the entire side of campus, throughout the parking lot, throughout the pool area, in order to create a safer environment. It's quite frankly fairly dark there now. New lighting today is so much brighter, less energy is being used, so much efficiency comes with that. If we redo the parking lot, put new lighting in, we can then add islands for landscaping and for safety, and make the campus a little bit safer. The plan is to include cart pathways and walkways to get people out of the parking lots, so that we see less people walking through where cars are driving. And as I mentioned earlier, since we're going to be going through all this in our plans, at least, we are looking to enhance the facilities for the members. The pool is looking to be upsized slightly. It would still have the 6 competitive lanes for the swim team. It would still have the diving well, but we have a small children's pool right now that does not connect to the main pool. If we connected to the main pool, we could create a zero entry so that people of all ages could walk into the pool more safely. We can add the water features that so many kids are looking forward to play in today. The last thing that was done at our pool happened 13 years ago. They put up a small building for locker rooms and bathrooms, and a very small kitchen area. That I can tell you that since I was there for about going on 30 years, that building was undersized the day it opened. It has a grill and it has a fryer, and that's it. It's not much more than a snack bar, and the reality is we need a kitchen with freezer space, with storage area. We have our staff running back and forth from the clubhouse to the freezers constantly. It just creates a volume of traffic and safety, because they're always running through and across the parking lot to bring up food and goods to the pool. So we're looking to add a food and beverage building that will have a full-size kitchen with freezer space, with storage space, with the bathroom for the staff, and then take the existing building that's there now, keep the current locker rooms, but add family bathrooms, which really are in demand today, and then take the current kitchen and enhance the space for our tennis folks. They have a single bathroom to work with. We would like to put in men's and ladies' bathrooms. We would like to put in a changing area for each men and ladies, as well as have a common area for them to store shoes, their rackets and things like that, and give them a little bit of an upgrade. Part of the ideas here is while we're connecting all this tissue, which is the parking lot, we would then look to expand the golf range by a couple rows of parking so that we can actually add more green space to that area of our campus and give people more grass to hit off of versus hitting off of the mats that are on the concrete pads. We would shift over our existing putting green in order to create more space for parking. We know that part of this planning has to be to address how to get more parking on the campus. So yes. So if we could, we have a number of pictures and renderings that we'd like to share, and certainly we're showing you the pictures here right now are looking out to the current building and to some shading areas that exist. This is where we're proposing to put a new food and beverage building that would overlook our tennis courts, which appear in the background there behind those trees and that black fence, to have a full-size kitchen for the members. And I'm happy to move through these, just to give you appearance. Current pool, the current building that's there now, that was built in 2010. You see that structure to the left that's vine covered is our existing equipment room where our pool system is. That is greatly in need of repair. Yep, thank you, Joe, appreciate that. So that building needs to be fortified and roof redone, and but we would leave it where it is. Let me just keep rolling through a few of these. This is looking back on a far corner. The plan over here we have on our sketch plan is to drop a basketball court for the kids in this area. We do some leveling of that ground over there. This is looking out to Manoa Road. It's what you would see beyond those trees. Again, the whole idea here is our campus, we try to put as much coverage on the external side so that people aren't looking in and we're not looking out. We want that buffer zone around our campus as much as possible. So this is a close-up of the current pool building. And the decking that exists all around the pool is in desperate need of replacement. Again, when you start going in and pulling the pool out, pulling the decking out, doing the excavation work, we're into the millions of dollars already. So if we're going to do all this, we might as well enhance the pool. We might as well enhance the experience for the members. Our current pool, 6 lanes, which is fairly standard and pretty much required for swim teams that compete in the area. And then the closest piece that's next to us here on the front side of the picture is our diving well. This pool would get slightly reoriented, and we're happy to show that when we walk to the sketch plan. Just a close-up of the current building. We would essentially, if you could show them, Chris, the areas that are overhanging, those would actually be enclosed, and we would create, on the left side is the men's room, the right side is the ladies' room. We create a family bathroom so that moms and dads would be able to go into those. Just a slightly different view of that. These overhangs would be hidden because they would be now where the bathrooms we got created. This is our entry point where people check in. This is our safety area that services the pool. And this is looking back out towards the clubhouse in the background. This area would actually stay fairly open. People like to be under the 2 large trees, which would absolutely remain.
John, if I could ask you a quick question. Mind, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, not at all, Jim.
Thank you. John, we referred to the club, as being self-contained. Can you just give the board an idea of what the membership Haverford Town?
Oh, sure, yeah. So our membership's roughly 740 members, member families, and fully 50% of them are in Haverford Township. So we are very much a local club. People don't come from much more than a few miles. Most of our members come from less than a few miles to come to the club. There are many people who walk to the club. So
John, you said 750 families?
yeah, 740.
Okay. Are they all, are some of them just pool, or do you do both?
So the breakdown is we have 425 golfers at the club. And then we have about 240 house members. And most house members are getting dining facilities, pool facilities, tennis facilities. They actually don't play very much golf. They have a right to play once a month, 17 times a year. We actually see very few people actually do that. They really are coming for the facilities, this being the primary driver.
So, just if I can
Please,
interject
Chris.
here, we would have about 740 families that have access to the pool, but not 740 families actually use the pool, even though they technically could if they wanted to. We probably have a core of more like 200 that are really pool goers out of that 700 would be my best educated guess.
And Chris, although this is, driven to make a nicer facilities for the members, we're not looking to have a membership drive to increase the number of members.
No, in fact, we have a quite long waiting list to get into the club. So right now, we're pretty much one for one. We've been at right around the 740 to 750 number, and we're not looking to go beyond that. So we're pretty much where we're going to be.
It may be 120 acres, but we still see that there's capacity on the golf course. There may be open tee times for 40,000 rounds. We don't want 40,000 rounds. We couldn't handle that. The conditions of the course would be awful. So we don't see people abusing the facilities. What we see is demand for the facilities to be enhanced. When every club in this area is doing this type of project or have already done it, we need to do it. And it's not just the idea of keeping up with the Joneses, because I just really dislike that term. It's really about giving our members, first, the better experience, and two, continuing to make us attractive, though, to this membership. We want this club to be strong 20 years from now, and having better facilities and upgraded facilities. And quite frankly, it's even just replacing what we have would be better. But we need to attract people forever, so that this club stays another 125 years. So let's look at some of the other elements here if we can find it. You may
I think
be.
it's, let me go down here. Just go to the aerials.
Yeah, let's do that.
I think we just kind of click down.
I think we've got 7 colored renderings that will help. So what you see on your left are 4 courts that exist there today. What you see on your right are 3 courts that exist there today. Those are hard courts on the left, soft courts on the right. And what you're seeing above, and with that pointer might help, is let's circle up the current building that exists there today. It's about an L-shaped building. Originally designed to be added onto, but we found that the design would actually probably work better if we create a separate building. So the large building on the left is really just a kitchen in the center. And then we put shaded area on the right side so people can be out of the sun. The sun comes from the left over to the right. So think of the sun coming towards us in this picture all day long. And then the far end, we would put a covered area for drinks and bar. And again, those people would be shaded throughout the day. The pool is slightly being reoriented, partly because of the flow of the sun. That was never considered 70 years ago, which way does the sun go, but people think of that stuff today. The area on the right of the pool would be the 0 entry area. We put some water features in there for the kids. And then folks of all ages would be able to more safely walk into the pool from the 0 entry area. The far end of the pool is a diving well. The small circular area, the lower left, would be an area primarily for adults to get in there, so kids aren't necessarily under their feet as they want to just sit there and enjoy the water. So to the right is a parking area that's behind these darker green courts. That would be a new parking area. That is Westchester Pike to the right. And right now, there's a large berm that exists there
Go to the picture to show
Okay.
what it looks like today.
Yeah, there you go. So that berm exists in that space today. The first picture you saw, we have shading and trees and a buffer that we absolutely want to keep along Westchester Pike. But this berm is just simply soil that could be removed, and we could put roughly 30 cars in that area to help bring in additional parking to the zone.
That row of arborvitae that goes all the way would
Remain.
conceivably stay. Go back to the.
Yep, let's go to the PDF here. So let's shift through this a little bit. Originally, there was some concepts put together that you may have talked about, and I think it may have been listed on the agenda about paddle courts. We are not pursuing that. It's really just the expense to add another $1.5 million for 4 paddle courts and a hut. Just aren't really something that we feel that it's in the best interest of the club at this point in time. But they could be done in the future at some point, where that front deck is where they could, you need 4 in order to compete in leagues, and we could put 2 there, we could put 2 up where that little house is on the far end. So we're actually gonna plan to leave space if the club in the future wants to do that. Obviously, they'd have to come back and get permission, but it's an element that some people have talked about, but right now, we think the expense and the dollars are really best served to replace current infrastructure and add enhancements to those features that we really serve now. This is a higher view of the parking near us. To the bottom of the picture is that new area that would be on Westchester Pike. And you're looking down at the reoriented pool, looking over at the campus, and you're seeing the clubhouse at the far end, at the top of the picture. We would, for this side of campus, we would add the new parking area, but all the parking areas on this side would stay where they are today. As we work our way to the clubhouse, that's where we would like to cut a couple of different new zones of parking in order to make up for the range expansion. So this is, the main clubhouse is to the upper left of the picture. The current parking lot is to the bottom left of the picture. And this is slightly smaller than what's there today, because what we don't have a great rendering of is the range would actually come into the parking lot a little bit further. So we've got to replace those 12 or 14, 15 spaces with other areas. So what we do is, if you look to the upper right of the clubhouse, right now that's where our current putting green is located. We would take that zone over and increase parking, and we would create a zone that goes beyond that parking lot it's only accessible by walking or carts. People would no longer be able to drive down the hill. That building that Chris is circling right now is our pro shop. Right now, cars can come down there. We just find that to be an unsafe area. I can speak from personal experience. It's not a great area to have people driving by.
Just to add to that, this entire area, you'd be able to walk and to take golf carts right here to get to our golf areas, our driving range here and putting green, without having to traverse through this. Right now, people will drive right up this main entrance and right through our parking lots in order to get it. So that's it. There will also be, although it's not shown here, another path that connects to the pool, so people will be able to walk over to the pool area, and our staff will be able to drive product and everything over here without having to go through our parking lots.
You're going to have to cross at one spot, but at least there'll be one specific zone where people can have a safe passageway.
Excuse me, John. This
Sure.
rendering doesn't show the paddleball courts?
That one does not. We've taken those off.
You're not doing that?
We're not going to do this. They're between all the different committees we've had dozens of members who have been involved in this, and it's pretty much to a person. At this point in time, it doesn't make sense to do it. Sure. Let's see what the next one's showing us. So this is just a little slightly modified view. We're looking from kind of above the range, so you can actually see a little better picture of the range expansion on the bottom right here. They're allowing some spaces for carts. a turnaround zone for the cars. And what we would do is we would move the putting green that exists in this left-hand triangular area today, where the parking is going to go, and move it to the front of the building, which actually will tie into the range so that you really have one area to go warm up and go practice. And kind of centralize our members' activities.
When you were talking, I'm sorry, it's gonna
Yeah, please.
interject. When you were talking about the increased lighting, is there any like bigger lights, elevated lights in the parking
It's not
lots, things like
necessarily,
that? Or?
it's not necessarily about bigger or taller, it's really about what the illumination that LEDs can do today. They are much higher distance that they can spread their light more evenly. Where you do a lighting study today, you're going to see, you're next to the pole, you're going to see very bright, and then it dies off, how many looms per feet. They do an analysis. The LEDs will save power, and they are much more consistent before they drop off. So it's not about bigger, not about adding significantly more, it's about much better technology that exists today.
What are the hours that the lights are on? And in the plan as well as today?
We have a timer that now in our current, that puts them on, that we adjust based on daylight. And they'll stay on throughout the night. They'll go off, I think they go off around 2:30 in the morning or something around that there. But I have to honestly check on what time they actually go off. Sometimes I'll get security footage and I do see them go off in
Now,
the middle of the night. But-
we, not surprisingly, deal with theft and break-in, not just in cars, but in our building. We've had multiple break-ins in the building in the past 8 months. So you hope light deters a little bit, but we're putting in an upgraded security system. I would love to have waited to see if we get this plan in to put new lines in, but we just can't wait. Nobody knows who folks are. Haverford, police have been great, but they're literally people who will come in dressed like golfers and watch the parking lot and then break into the cars. It's just the reality of being with the kind of facility and the size we are, and there's so many people who come in and out, and you have so many guests and friends, and you don't know everybody who's walking on campus. The lights do add a little bit of a deterrent. They sure do. But I think we try to keep everything within the boundary of the campus, and I don't get a lot of feedback about anyone saying that we are, shining lights into the neighborhoods. At least we haven't heard that.
Good.
Let's jump one ahead. Let's see where else we are. Yeah, we're kind of reiterating a few things. Actually, not that it's a great appreciation for it from where we are. You can see the range expansion a little bit better. That side of campus will still be, significantly green. That's in the far upper left end. That parking lot's going to be a little bit smaller, but with the idea that we can expand parking near the clubhouse and up on Westchester Pike. And the reason the Westchester Pike is such a great location is because in the summertime, when we reach our peak of use, people want to be as close as possible to the front entrance to the pool. So putting parking up in there makes great sense for the heavy times of the year. Outside of Santa Brunch, that's the busiest time of the year.
Could you explain that sort of rectangle? on
So
the
that's an
left?
existing deck that's there today. It's just an observation deck for the tennis folks. They can look left and they can look right, and they can see games being played on both the soft courts and the hard courts.
Two things I want to make sure that we emphasize to the board, and that is, notwithstanding the fact we're going to add a little bit to the driving range, right? Lose a parking spot or two there, and the new pool and the rearrangements. And we're not going to have any additional members. We're going to have, but we will as a net gain parking spot from what we have.
Yes, I think it's more than four.
I think we have it in the sketch plan. So maybe it's a good time to just bring up the sketch plan here.
Yeah, and let me add another point that we've chatted with,
Jim, what was it, 22 additional spots?
For what was submitted, we're showing 19 additional.
19, okay.
so one of the things we've chatted with staff in the past, and something that it's very important is, the way calculations are done in parking is every zone of our property is calculated as its own parking requirement and simply gets aggregated as a total. But that's really not how the membership uses the property. I drive in the morning, I'll go play golf, then I go eat. I don't bring a second car in to go eat. If I visit another area, same thing with families who are coming to play golf, will go inside to have lunch, go join their families at the pool. They're not coming with 3 different cars. It's one person who comes in and stays on campus. So we really don't use the facilities to the aggregation of parking as it's calculated, because every unit is counted as its own business operation center, essentially. That's really not how the membership uses the facilities. And as Jim was mentioning earlier, we don't have access to Furlong, we don't have access to Steel Road, there's no one who can get out this, Westchester Pike, they can't get out to Manoa, there's no parking along those roads, we certainly don't have any access to Country Club Lane, so we really are a self-contained operation. If there's overflow, somebody finds a grass spot, but that doesn't happen really often. As the manager Berman said to me, he said, well, I imagine your members would be pretty upset if you can't find parking spaces for them. And sure, we have to keep the members happy with what facilities we have available for them. So there's a lot happening in this sketch plan. I think the renderings really help to see things from more of a true view. But this is the current layout that's there now, the orientation of the pool. If you could just circle up that pool, Chris, do you mind? That's what we have today. We actually have a really large zone for our pool as compared to many other facilities. We've got a lot of space in that zone. We just have everything pushed into one corner. So if we can jump to the, let's see, this is the proposed. Right. So yes, you still see the 2-and-2 paddle courts on this proposed. They are definitely not being pursued. But the pool would be slightly reoriented, slightly larger. We would add a new cafe building of about 1,200 square feet, so we could have a full-size kitchen with backup operations for freezer, for food storage, for employee bathroom, wash area for the space, covered shaded area because that entire zone gets sun all day long. And then come out to all the connected tissue, which be, once we would essentially work on the pool, we would come out and start doing the parking lot. Once all the heavy equipment gets done, coming in and out of the property, and we'd work our way around to replace the parking lot all around, and then cut in and excavate for that new parking area that is up on Westchester Pike. For the new parking area that would be over in the middle of the campus by the existing pro shop and clubhouse, right there, which adds a significant amount of parking, and then come around to add a large putting green, which is the kind of the upside down triangle that's Chris is pointing to with the pointer now, and then far bottom is the existing range. We would just take it back a bit, so we'd be able to put more grass and allow people to hopefully rotate throughout the season, in the grass growing season, that we could give people the opportunity to always hit off of grass. That's certainly a premium on a small area.
John, on one, I don't mean to keep interrupting you.
No, you're fine,
Last thing that I think it's pretty self-evident, but, the slides that we're looking at here are fairly active because it's tennis and pool, the active activities, but there remains, for the rest of the site, acres and hundreds of acres of green space, correct? I mean,
Yes. Yeah, the whole entire property is about 120 acres, about 19 is what you're looking at right here. Most of it's all open space is the course. That's where we have.
You use some of the tennis courts for pickleball now?
We do.
There's
Is that-
1, 2, 3, 4, we use those for pickleball.
Is that set up for pickleball?
They're-
Or
they're-
or do you
they're-
take them up and down?
They're taped, so you can use them for tennis, you can use them for pickleball. But the nets, yes, you
That-
drop
that's
the,
that roll in.
yeah, right. Certainly a popular game. Haven't tried it myself, but lots of people love it.
You don't have to run, you just.
I can't.
And a question about the clubhouse. Do you have weddings there?
We do. We have stopped really in the last 4 years, not just because of COVID. We've really stopped pursuing outside activities. And here's why. The club should be, in my opinion, really oriented to the members. And we, quite frankly, burn out our staff if we have more and more and more functions. Members use the club significantly, and we have a lot of member events. We've got outings that we still have on Mondays, and our club sees our staff work 7 days a week through June and July and into August. We don't need any more outside events. It's not that we don't have large events, but they're primarily all through a member, their family, their connection. That's who we're taking care of. Part of the plan that we have not really shown anything about yet is we're looking into kind of reorienting and renovating our current dining space. We've got an outside patio that doesn't get used 5-6 months a year because of weather. We're going to look into, as part of this plan, enclosing that. But that's a much easier activity. You just add walls to the outside patio, which is already covered, and condition it with the heat and AC.
If you were to have an event, like, what would be the maximum capacity you would accommodate in the clubhouse?
The ballroom maximum capacity is about 230 people.
230?
And we've done large events where we've taken over the entire first floor, used all dining areas.
Yeah, I mean, so we could theoretically have 230 in the ballroom and then be open downstairs for our regular membership, so daily dining. There's typically not more than 70 or 80 people. I mean, that would be the most there would really ever be downstairs, in addition to the 230 that could be upstairs in an event. That would be an unusual situation where we'd have that much. But like to your question on weddings, we have one wedding scheduled this year, which is a member that's getting married. We did as many as the year after when weddings kind of reopened, we did 6. So that would probably be our max that we would do.
We're simply not a facility that's set up for the 325 plus person wedding. We just don't have that capacity. And there's many other venues you can go to. So people come here because they have some connection, some affinity for the club. That's why they're going to hold a wedding at Leonard. I got married there many years ago, but it was a 100-person wedding.
Is the plan to kind of keep the same parking distance on Manoa roadside? I know there's a bunch of trees in between the parking
Yes,
and
we would
and the
not
houses there.
move 1 inch over where that parking stops today,
Okay.
on the
Which
Manoa
would be
Road
really
side.
So all the boundary
Repaving the
trees are the
current line
same.
as is right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that allows us to stay within the grandfathering on that parking.
It would just be this right here, which I guess is on Westchester.
Yep.
That would be new.
And you do preserve the trees along Westchester?
Yeah, and that's as much for our members as it is for others. Everybody wants to see the greenery.
So some of the trees would have to come out, like the trees here are where the parking would be.
Those
But
pines are old,
this whole-
large trees and things. There's nothing special about those sap trees.
This whole row of arborvitae would presumably, we would like to see it stay. And potentially even like this tree here that's right on the end, just from a space perspective. We're not looking to take trees down just for the sake of taking them down. It's more about just needing to create the space for the parking. I think there's probably another picture, another angle that shows.
If you look at the proposed parking area where you're adding the 28 spaces where it turns from Manoa Road Westchester Road. Is there a reason why you're not connecting that lot to the existing driveway?
Yeah,
So
it's,
it dead ends?
it's fire regulation. They don't want that driveway to connect to the main and people come in off of Westchester Pike and have somebody trying to come out.
Okay.
I think it just for us, like the safety of how close it is to where you're actually coming in. Might be hard to gain that perspective right there, but if that driveway was right, it'd be pretty tough from a sightline standpoint too. And our engineers and architect said we'd have some issues with that.
And then is the proposed pool going to be heated, or is it only used in the 3 summer months?
Good question. I think we've discussed it, didn't make a decision on it. I think there is some talk about heating it, which would really be, a lot of that would really be for the beginning of the season and potentially into maybe the weekends of September. I don't think we have any, we don't have any interest in like making it a 6 or 7 month facility.
So you're not
But
gonna stretch
potentially
it
into,
into
potentially to September,
Okay.
September 30th at the latest.
I was just curious, because a couple pools stretch it from like March until
Oh, is that right?
December.
As a general manager, I will fight hard against that.
Right, the reality is, you have to staff that. You know,
It's-
people ask for another week at the end of the season, but they realize is you still need the full staff there to take care of that
Well, you
operation.
mentioned your swim team. A lot of it's just the swim teams that are coming in for that, but I just was
We have a pretty, like our swim team's a fun summer swim team that is basically just June and July and it ends. So we wouldn't really, potentially weekends in September would be our game out of the heating.
This is a good breaking point. Can you speak to the comments from Charles Faulkner? Is there someone who would like to speak to those? Sure. It's in his letter, this is Charles Faulkner's letter of April 2nd, 2024.
Jim, do you have, I don't have that with me,
I think,
but I would certainly look to the engineers and
I'll pass it over to Jim. I just wanted to add one thing before I pass it over to Jim to go through the whole letter. And Charles did give us a review on April 2nd of 2028. And
Oh, there we go.
We have that, or 24. With respect to the parking, I mean, there's a couple issues with respect to the parking in terms of our way of thinking is, one is that, that it's different parking than if you're going to a restaurant, as John said, or you're going to a restaurant, you're going someplace else. Like, you can picture a family comes and, with one car, and dad goes and plays golf, and, kids go to the pool, and then everybody meets for dinner, and then, so that you're not having as many cars there all the time, so that when you try and use the calculations that are in the ordinance as it stands now, you're almost, I think you really would end up with over parking. And we had talked to Dave Berman, Chuck, I'm not sure if you were there for that.
He was, yeah.
And Gary, so that was
Gary
one
was-
consideration. And then the other consideration is, that we have a situation now where we're non-conforming with parking, and we're actually lessening the non-conformity because we're adding 19 more spots than we have right now, even though we're not putting any other people up. So it's something we can talk about more, and I'll talk with Chuck and Gary, and we'll talk about the different theories I have with respect to the law on that. But to me, it would seem that maybe we have a situation here where we don't need a variance for any kind of parking, whereas we have a non-conforming situation and just natural expansion of that non-conformity, which would be allowed under the law. So, but that's the only one that I wanted to jump in on, and then I'll let Jim talk about.
Jim, do you mind?
Would you just like to go through the whole letter?
Please.
So comments 1 and 2, Jim just touched on. I think we just need some discussions on the required parking, since we're not increasing memberships. Can this be viewed as a reduction of an existing nonconformity rather than needing a new waiver? I believe some discussions are required with the township for that one. Number 3, parking stalls should be provided with bumper guards or wheel stops when necessary for safety or protection to adjacent structures of landscaped areas. We'll provide them. At this stage, the sketch plan, we didn't get too far into actual engineering. We're still coordinating with the course architect now on where he actually wants curbing and in areas where they'll just be edge of pavement. Instead of curbing, we'll have the necessary wheel stops. Number 4 basically is lighting. We'll comply with that. We have a full land planning department that will design the lighting. To John's point, it will be more efficient LED than is out there now, designed to township standards. Obviously, we'll make sure there's no light trespass and essentially zero lighting levels at the property line. So we're not encroaching on any adjacent properties or PennDOT right-of-ways. Number 5, in all INS districts, there shall be a front yard landscape strip 30 feet wide, planted and landscaped subject to the approval of the Shade Tree Commission. So I think this one would probably also warrant a little discussion. The only place, so we do have the areas, sorry to make everyone turn around. As was discussed along Manoa Road, we're improving these parking areas, but we're matching the existing edge of paving, so that buffer will remain. We're hoping that it's acceptable to essentially match that buffer along the section of Westchester Pike at the intersection there. So yes, we will be removing some trees, not providing a full 30 feet, but it will match what's provided along Manoa Road.
So that would require a variance from the zoning board? The fact that you're not meeting the 30-foot criteria?
I think that's a good question. I'd like to.
All right, well, let's finish this, and then, because I have other zoning issues.
Okay.
Okay, number 6, any single parking area with 50 or more spaces shall utilize at least 5% of its area in landscaping. We are proposing the little knockouts in the parking area there are landscape buffers, and we will make sure we have enough to meet that requirement.
They're actually done today. It's just a sea of black pavement, so they're necessary for traffic flow, for safety. We fully recognize that.
Number 7, it appears steep and/or very steep slopes may be present on the site. The applicant shall delineate these areas on future submissions. We will comply with that. We have them marked out in our working file. We did not submit proposed grading because we honestly hadn't gotten that far for the sketch plan, but we're disturbing below what the township allows, even just in the project area, and it's much less than is allowed if you consider the whole 30-acre course. May be prudent to delineate the approximate limits of proposed improvements on the plan. So we will comply with that. If essentially the left, and my battery's dying here, the left side of the plan is mentioned where there's going to be an improved short game area, and then the bottom is the driving range. So we'll just more clearly delineate how much work the course architect is doing in those areas. Signature blocks shall be provided on the plan. Obviously, we will include them on the land development submission.
Jim, how wide are the drive aisles in the new parking areas?
How wide are they?
Are
I
they
believe
going
they were
to be?
designed to 24 feet.
24?
Currently, they don't meet code. So we designed, I believe 24 is the minimum for two-way 90-degree parking.
Okay, so the parking bays would be basically 60 feet wide, two 18-foot spaces and a 24-foot driveway?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We thank you very much for putting us on the agenda. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Happy to answer any additional questions for sure. We feel like we have a really good working relationship with the township, and they've been extremely supportive of this club for a very long time, and we're very lucky to be where we are.
I do have a question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hi, Rob.
Go first. You go first.
Okay. I just had 2 questions. I know this was just a sketch plan. What is your total limit of disturbance? Sorry, guys, that's for Jim. What is your total limit of disturbance going to be?
I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing, I
The-
apologize.
That's
Total-
okay. Limit of disturbance
Uh,
estimated.
It's essentially going to be this whole area, probably around 10 acres, but I'll finalize that with the course architect's plans.
And, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, within that, we're increasing the impervious by about 0.3, 0.4 acres. A little less than is shown on these plans, because the plans that were submitted still had the paddle courts.
And I'm assuming stormwater management will be designed as part of the increase in impervious cover?
Yes, we have the infiltration testing scheduled. The whole course essentially drains to an unnamed tributary of Cobb's Creek. So there'll be most likely underground basins under 1 or 2 areas of the parking lot to meet the township, and we'll need an NPDS permit, so township and state codes.
Okay. And then I did note that there is on Westchester Pike a bus stop right there. I don't know if any of your staff or any member of the club utilizes that bus stop, and I'm sure there could be some potential safety concerns about providing a direct access to a bus stop, but I wasn't sure if that was something, since you're going to be removing some area of that buffer right there on Westchester Pike where that
Yeah.
stop was, if that would
There's
be
no access.
beneficial.
It's a solid fence. So you can't walk through that parking lot and get on the Westchester Pike. You have to walk out through the drive.
I don't see, though, that there's sidewalks that connect from the parking lot on Manoa. It looks like the sidewalks terminate at the corner there. So there's only sidewalks on Westchester Pike, and they don't actually continue around. I'm not sure if you do have any staff that utilize that bus route.
So they would come in, into the front entrance on Westchester Pike, and they walk up.
They'd come down that drive
Yes.
aisle there on Westchester Pike?
Yes.
Which also doesn't have any sidewalks into the property.
The sidewalks end at the property, at the driveway, and then continue on. So a connection from the sidewalk there down to the sidewalk, that would be running along the tennis courts is what you're asking about.
Correct, yes. Just something to consider.
Yep.
As you're doing your improvements, to increase the potential for that pedestrian connection, particularly for staff members or members who might be utilizing the public transit options.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Do you have caddies as well as golf carts?
We do.
Good. I ask as a former caddy.
There's a lot of people who are members today who were former caddies at our own place. It's one of the unique things about our club is that people have some connection and they eventually become members. They don't just leave. It's kind of cool.
You have designated areas for the golf carts and for cars to be traveling through the site. I noticed on the existing drawing, you have a specific area located for trash. Where would you be putting the trash facility in that it seems like what you're going to be doing is possibly increasing the amount of trash that's going to be generated, and I didn't see it located on the revised plan.
We have chatted about a couple different
Yeah,
areas. It's
it's
possible
a
zones.
great question, because we haven't come up with that exact answer yet, but our thought was to I have the pointer. Oh, no.
Yeah, I think it's located right in this area now, which is at the edge of that berm.
Right.
That's where it is today. Whatever we do, we've got to put it somewhere where it's hidden by fencing so that,
And accessibility.
exactly, so the staff has to have access to it, but you also have to make it with some level of beautification so that members aren't looking at a trash bin set. So we actually have some that are by the clubhouse, but we have the large ones are out in the parking lot today.
Okay, and the other question I have is just a basic question as far as how you're going to handle it in terms of construction. Are you going to be phasing it, or are you going to come in 1 year and do it all?
So it would be a phased project, and at least at this point in time, we believe it'll go like follows, that you would break ground in September of this year if we get through our approval processes and get our NPDES permit. And the pool would be dealing with all of the demolition work that needs to get done. The pool comes out, the decking comes up, The interior of the building gets torn down, for that needs to be renovated. And foundational work would be done on the new building before the ground freezes. That way, after the ground freezes, you'd be doing all the above ground work, so you could work all winter long. And this has been a successful process at other clubs. You don't want to lose the summer season for your pool usage. So you would really be hitting that zone first and foremost, get all the heavy equipment off of that area, and then start to address your parking lot. And we have to phase this in a way that we always have parking available for our membership. So we're going to have to park on one side at some point, we're going to have to park on the other at another time. But it would behoove us to do the excavation work in the springtime and start working our way into making those cuts where the current putting green is going to be moved out, and the current parking lot's going to get cut where the range gets expanded. And then you're hoping to get to the point where you can pour the lot and lay that asphalt out as continuously as possible.
Sure.
So you get that excavation and those cuts done, and where that outside edge is going to be on that new parking area, and then you go in and do the paving, and you just start one end and you start moving your way around.
Okay, thank you.
We would then have the opportunity to finish off the range in the short game area last, because that's really about growing grass. And they're not dependent on the hardscape to get done to grow grass, but we need to cut those zones off and get that finished before they start making the soil ready for receiving.
Thank you.
Sure.
So will the project result in like an increase in impervious area and increased stormwater demands?
We did address the idea of impervious increase. It's a
0.4 acres?
0.3 or 0.4 acres of increase.
It's about that.
Okay.
It's under a half an acre.
Increase of the impervious surface.
That exists today.
Yes. With this plan, without the courts, we're increasing it a little less than a half an acre.
The pool would be considered new impervious, the pool deck.
Pool, yes, we counted the pool and the deck as impervious.
New impervious. Fire stormwater management.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's going to have to be a couple of zones that we don't have today that will have to be created.
I have a couple questions for you, if you've got a minute. There is one category in the parking regulations that talks about the requirement for parking for court,
Okay.
okay? And I don't see that listed in your summary,
Okay.
okay? So you might want to add that. I
Okay.
understand your reasoning that you don't need all those spaces. And is it your intent to make that argument to the township manager and zoning officer? Or make that argument to the zoning board?
I think I would make that argument first to the zoning officer, and then if I'm not successful, then to the zoning hearing board.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so your hope is not to have to go to the zoning board?
We'd like to avoid the zoning board if we could.
So you'll have to make a strong argument for the 30-foot buffer then also?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's when I started to get up to say, is that, we'll take a look as how close we can get, and I want to take a look more at the law on nonconformities and the expansion of a nonconformity. So.
Might be helpful if you had some type of parking study or analysis that shows, all these individual uses, but in reality, we only need these and these and these. Might help your argument wherever you go.
It's a great idea.
Okay. But you still plan to pursue the land development process?
We do.
Okay. So you'll be back with preliminary final land development plans?
Right.
that Meet all our township.
Yeah, I think we probably ask for a waiver to do preliminary final together if we
Right.
could, but we would be back for both, yes.
Okay. And then I guess from a scheduling standpoint, you're hoping that the pool will be ready for next Memorial Day, right?
Yes.
Okay. What are your plans for improving the existing parking lots? It's just matter of overlay? Mill and overlay?
that's it in short, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so on the plans that were submitted, it's hard to tell which is which, so we tried to delineate them, like existing parking to be improved or proposed parking. The ones that are listed as existing parking to be improved, we are grading them at the existing grade. So essentially, would just be a mill and overlay.
Okay.
And then the new area is obviously full depth paving.
Okay, and then you'll restripe the parking to be 9 by 18, I guess?
Yes,
Okay.
we're showing design to township standards.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all very much. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you for a
Good seeing you.
good presentation.
Take care. Thank you.
And welcome back, James. I was just saying, welcome back.
Oh, thank you, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's nice to be back. We're on this side.
The next item on our agenda is the erosion and sediment control stormwater management involving amendments to Chapter 78. It's the formally 78 -13, the short title being Township of Haverford Stormwater Management Ordinance. And Charles Pinoni is here to present.
And I brought my colleague Bridget Gillen here, who has been working on this ordinance for a little bit on various townships. So I'm not
Charles,
going to
just
get
by-
into too much detail here, but let me just go through general.
Charles,
Jen-
just by way of quick introduction, this is a proposal that is coming from the commissioners of Haverford Township.
This is coming from Delaware County, okay, in conjunction with DEP. It started back in 2022, Bridget, it was.
Then we started doing the updates, yeah.
Yeah, and just for various reasons, it's just getting taken care of now, okay? So you do have an existing stormwater management ordinance, and this is an update, basically, for, you know, there's certain changes to address, you know, newer methods of doing things. There's certain changes to address issues that we've come across in the past. And then there's certain other changes that are being proposed by DEP and by the county, okay? So let me just run through briefly. Existing stormwater management is Chapter 78, it's Article 2. There's Article 1 is erosion and sedimentation control. Article 2 is stormwater management. That was adopted back in 2005, okay? So quite a bit ago, okay?
And that was in response to the Darby Creek, Cobbs Creek watershed study done by the county, correct?
I believe so. Is that,
And basically, all the townships with
Yeah,
those watersheds
167, yep.
adopted basically the same
yeah,
ordinance.
yeah,
Okay.
essentially. Okay. The purpose is, you know, as you can read in the stormwater management, promote public health, safety, general welfare, water quality by implementing drainage and stormwater management practices, including land development, construction, and earth disturbance activities, okay? So it includes that, and in this township, it's substantial with regard to those things, okay? So it's being updated to conform to PennDOT or PADP standards and regulations, MS4 requirements, and just general updating with regard, like I said, to some newer technologies, newer ways of doing things, and stuff like that. Okay. Now the purpose of the ordinance, if you read your packet here, you're given, we have you with a packet here, and the changes in red are what's being proposed, okay? And then there's crossouts, obviously, of what's being deleted there, okay? So if you go to 7815, which is on page 2, there's a purpose, general purpose there, which essentially isn't changing, but note a couple things there, particularly C, I, and L. C minimizes increase in stormwater volume. I is focus on infiltration of stormwater to maintain base flow and to prevent degradation of surface groundwater quality and other resources. L, address the quality and quantity of stormwater discharges from a developed site. And O, preserve the flood carrying capacity of streams. And all of you have lived here for quite some time. I believe you know what happens when we get those intense rains around here. So it's important that we're doing this. It's important that we keep up with stormwater management, and it's important that we incorporate as much as possible that we can to incorporate it everywhere and maintain as much of a robust system as possible. All right. Just want to walk through some general things in through here. Section 7817, okay, which is on page 4, okay? Those are the regulated activities, okay? They exist today as is, and they're not being changed. So as you look down through 1 through 10, land development, subdivisions, alteration and everything, those are what happened or what was in the ordinance in 2005. They're not being changed at all, okay? Moving down to,
Chuck,
yes,
is the exemption for 1,000 square foot of impervious
Gonna
or
get to
less? Okay, we get there.
that's coming up. So, you know, the two biggest things that really drive things are the applicability standards and the exemptions, okay? So the applicability standards are not changing at all, and nor are the exemptions. But to answer your the exemptions have added a little bit, but the base exemptions for land use that typically go along with land development is the 1,000 square foot of new or replacement impervious. That's staying the same. There's no change. And then the 5,000 square feet of earth disturbance, and that is also staying the same. Now, unless this board has other feelings, I mean, that's why it's in front of you to look at it and determine and offer some comments on whether those are.
All right, two questions while we're on that area. Are there any high quality or exceptional value wooders in township? No, okay, good. And what the heck's a high tunnel?
That same question.
It's agricultural.
It's an agricultural structure.
I had to Google it when I saw it too.
The guy in West Town used to do,
Yeah.
the farmer there.
Oh, yeah, Pete. Yeah.
Okay.
Something we'll probably never see, unless Lanark wants to go into farming. No.
Chuck, I just wanted to clarify, so we have the exemption for 1,000 square feet of new, additional, or replacement proposed impervious surface. So just for clarity's sake, if somebody is like replacing their driveway in kind in the same footprint, is that contributing towards that 1,000 square foot?
There are other narratives in the stormwater ordinance about that. Typically, the way it's been handled in the past, if you're just taking off that top layer, not disturbing the subbase and repaving the driveway, that's not necessarily considered new or replacement. You know, it's same width, same dimensions, everything. It's just a maintenance overlay, basically, is what it is.
How about if somebody has, say, a brick patio and they're taking it up to do a poured concrete patio?
We'd have to look at that it doesn't go that deep into that type of scenario right
Okay.
now, the stormwater management. And it depends on, what the brick is. Does it have pervious joints in it? What's underneath it? And there's got to be some judgment call.
Okay.
That's where Bridget comes in.
Just from like a, permits and codes enforcement standpoint, how do we explain this to residents so that they can understand what's a contributing impervious surface, what's a regulated impervious surface, and what is not? So it might be helpful to have some sort of clarification either through the ordinance language itself or in some sort of supplemental policy document that can go along with the building permit process when people are applying for permits for patios or driveways or other similar property improvements.
And I think what the township has done in the past, a lot of times, I seem to recall when the new ordinance came in, they put a flyer or something in there and just give you basic guidelines like you were talking about. If you're replacing your driveway and you're just not enlarging it and just pretty much a maintenance overlay, and then it's okay, otherwise it's this, and just to give them some guideline and cut down on some questions and everything, so.
And also just for clarification purposes, the 1,000 square feet, is that per project or is that a cumulative amount? So if you add a 500 square foot patio now, like new patio, and then you're doing, I don't know, do we count decks as impervious cover or no? Yeah? So, okay, so say you do a 500 square foot deck and a 500 square foot patio off the deck, not stacked, but side by side, that would trigger 1,000 square foot and would require stormwater management.
Yep.
If the project though is a 500 square foot patio, now and then in 3 years you do that 500 square foot deck, is it a cumulative then determination that you then achieve the 1,000 square foot overall new impervious cover for your property?
Yeah, and there's language in this new ordinance that sort of speaks to phasing and stuff like that.
I did see the phasing,
Yeah.
again, just saying as somebody who administers stormwater management ordinances
Yep.
on a daily basis, that it is helpful to provide clarity that it is in fact cumulative for the like non-land development projects. Because I think it's evident in land development a little bit more, but because I don't see that we have like a simplified stormwater management for projects that total. So this is something that we see a lot in, I've seen it a lot in Montgomery County and Chester County. Can't speak to Delaware County as much, but projects that accumulate more than 1,000 square feet regulated impervious cover, but less than insert some amount that the municipality decides upon, so that you don't have to go through full engineering studies to install a stormwater management facility. So for your average homeowner who just wants to do a couple of patio improvements, or maybe they're putting in a pool, and total cumulative impervious cover. So I've seen 3,000 square feet, I've seen 5,000 square feet, total cumulative impervious cover, kind of depends on what we want to do. But that is an option, and that's something that I would be interested in looking at if we don't already have something that's akin to that in this, just because it provides something more simple for somebody to implement who's not a land developer, who's not building a brand new house, who's just doing some minor improvements to their property. It creates a lower bar of entry for people to design it themselves, or they could have a landscape architect do it as opposed to hiring a full engineer to do, calculations and drainage area and infiltration testing and all of the other things that go along with it.
And right now, if you are proposing 1,000 square feet of between 1,000 and 2,000, the requirement is for groundwater recharge and water quality. And then once you hit 2,000, that's when the rate control and the fully engineered plan.
Okay, so it's 2,000.
Yes.
Okay.
As we consider, as the township considers, possibly revising those thresholds, the Crum Creek watershed, their Act 167 was updated roughly 10 years ago, and they dropped that simplified method where you would just need to take care of groundwater recharge. They dropped that down to 500 square feet. So 500 to 1,000, you would be on the hook for that simplified method. And that's incorporated into Marlboro, Springfield, Radnor, their ordinance. So, something.
I personally think the redevelopment or replacement is a little harsh. And I'll tell you why. There's a lot of houses in the township that have detached garages which sit at the back end of their property. They have a long driveway, so if they have a driveway that's 10 feet long, 10 foot wide, 100 feet long, plus turnaround area, they're over 1,000 square feet. And if that driveway is completely deteriorated and they need to replace it, most contractors come in with a backhoe and just pull up everything, put down more stone if they have to, and then put a new surface down. And according to this requirement or these regulations, that requires stormwater management. And similarly, like you take a look at a property like, say, the high school, they have a 10-foot wide sidewalk across the front of their property. They must have at least 500 foot of frontage. If they ever, for whatever reason, had to repair that sidewalk and replace it, technically they'd have to do stormwater management. I just don't think that's fair to the residents of the township. I understand big developers, things like that, where they're coming in and redoing a parking lot or something like that. But I think there are certain circumstances where I think the replacement is a little unfair. You spend $8,000, $9,000 to do your driveway and got to spend another $8,000 or $9,000 to put in stormwater management.
I don't disagree with you, but that's the feedback we're looking back for from the planning commission, so.
Yeah,
That's
I would
good.
just,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I would just echo that. I know that that's an existing condition, but it's like pulling teeth to get people to understand and implement these things anyway. So to rationalize to somebody that if they're not increasing the footprint of something, if they're literally just taking something out and putting something back in, if you leave in a crumbling driveway, then you're grandfathered in forever. But if you try to improve it and make it better, then you're going to be penalized for it, for not increasing the area of impervious cover. It doesn't really seem very fair, and that makes it, really challenging to have, good relationships with your residents when you're, and I sit on both sides of it, and so I'm trying to find ways
know you
to,
do.
make it a little bit easier
I know you do.
where we can. So I agree with Angela. I think that if we're going to be tinkering with this, I think that the replacement in kind, like the in-kind nature of it, that seems a little overkill. So certainly, when we're talking about what counts as new impervious cover, I've seen some municipalities where they look at the net change across the site. I don't interpret it that way in my ordinances when I implement them. If you take a garage and you take it out and you put a new garage over here, that's new, and that counts. So I'm not looking at it from a net perspective. Even if you restore that area of lawn underneath it, then you get a waiver, I don't know, and look for something else for it. But, there I think those ways of interpreting the regulation as to what counts as new impervious cover. So again, I'm just looking for clarity for residents to understand and developers to understand what we're asking for, and as well as the code officials to know what to enforce.
And Maggie, in this township, as you're probably aware, it's a little bit more, it's easier in some sections of the township to implement that than others.
Yes.
So we got to weigh that too.
Understood.
How do we be fair to everybody while still conforming to the ordinance?
Absolutely.
So-
There's never a solid answer that works for
There's
everyone
no
all the
one
time.
size fits all.
So if I have to replace all the plywood in my roof, okay, I got to take everything off and put a new roof on. That's new impervious.
Do you really want me to answer that?
No, because I did it. I didn't put in stormwater management. I was just trying to point out the fact that there's some circumstances where you got to, I don't know, look the other way is the right term, but you got to be reasonable about these things.
Yep. And I think the township, for the most part, in the past, has been reasonable, But the ordinance is the ordinance, and look, the objective of that ordinance is to control stormwater, which we have significant problems with in this township. I don't have to tell any of you people that. Okay, where were we? Exemptions, I guess, okay? So the other important aspect of this is exemptions, which is on page 5 of the ordinance here, okay? So the exemptions that exist today are remaining, okay, which is 1,000 and 5,000, but there's also some language that has been added there on top of page 5 with regard to exemptions and everything through there, okay? And that speaks to that phasing of the development and everything like that. It also speaks very clearly to if there's a drainage problem, if you're exempt and there's a known drainage problem that's downstream, the township has the right to say, no, you're not exempt. There's a problem downstream, you need to conform to stormwater management. So that's new, that's been added. And I think at least from my opinion, I think that's a good thing to have. Even though it is a judgment call, there are certain areas in the township that we know there's significant problems, so.
And Chuck, would that be something that would have to be identified prior, or is that something that's just identified through the particular review for that project?
Well, it depends, it depends what it is. If it's a grading permit or something that's coming in and it's technically exempt and we have a drainage problem down there, there's a little discretion that we're gonna have to use, I think. If it's a land development, that's a little easier, or a significant, development someplace, it's a little easier because, it's first of all bigger and obviously much more impervious and everything, but.
I wasn't sure if it was something that we have an existing list that's just been keeping track of areas that have been determined as problems because of either observations by township staff, inspections from engineers, or just general neighbor complaints that have come in. So I don't know if we have a repository for those things to be, like a registration of sorts, not anything formal per se, but, some sort of catalog of known problem areas.
I can give you 5 right off the hand.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Right now.
Not necessarily asking
So,
for one,
yes,
but
to
just
answer your question, Maggie, yes, there is.
okay.
There are a lot of projects that come into the township that you guys don't see. I mean, if someone putting up an addition and it's, 20 by addition, you guys don't review it.
No.
And that could be in an area that would require stormwater.
Could be, yep. It's going to require much more coordination to do that. There's no question about it.
Also, just a general comment about, on the first paragraph, it says, even though the applicant is exempt, he is not relieved from complying. Can we make things neutral? They, generally.
Yeah.
Just a pet peeve of mine when everything is written in the masculine form.
Okay. Let me just go through the rest and chime in with any questions or comments. Feel free. Jumping on the page. Should we move forward? There's 7824.
Bottom of 8.
I'm sorry?
That's the bottom of 8, on to 9.
I gotta find it myself.
Yes.
There's some, you can read through the definitions in here. There's been some definitions that have been modified, obviously, and there's been some definitions that have been significantly modified, like best management practices.
And impervious, not to cut you off, Chuck, impervious surface as well, to your point. I think that a lot more clarification is spelled out there.
Some of the previous, like Bridget said, some of the previous definitions were very vague and open to too much interpretation. So they've been tightened up, and at least we think they're much better and much more easy to interpret.
Chuck, on the waivers, who approves the waiver? On
Typically,
page 8?
it would be, we would look at it, if it was land development, it's straightforward, right? It would be you guys. If it's a grading permit to that, we would look at it, see the applicability of it, and then discuss it with staff and make sure we're on agreement.
So it's aside from land development, it'd be a staff
Yeah.
determination?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then I was going to say a question about impervious coverage definition.
Go ahead.
Yes, I do too.
I think there has to be a statement in here, that says basically that this definition has nothing to do with the definition in the zoning code for impervious coverage. The definitions are completely different.
Yeah.
And your concern with impervious is runoff, whereas zoning code is something completely different. So if we could qualify that definition to basically say, that this definition shall not be used to determine compliance with the maximum impervious surfaces ratios specified in chapter 182.
Very good point.
And the other thing in here is, I forget where I saw it now. You were saying what was impervious, synthetic turf fields. I think we got to identify that as either impervious or porous. Because it has a drainage layer, most of them have a drainage layer underneath. And I know in past experience, we didn't count them, I'm trying to think, as impervious, but we designed them as though they were a parking lot. So that's where the definition comes into play. You design it for stormwater management, it doesn't count towards impervious on the zoning side.
Yep. Very good point.
Just to echo that, so the zoning, so I guess the other thing is how the Saldo defines impervious surface, just because you get into a lot of trouble when you have different definitions of what counts as impervious cover in your different ordinances. So between Saldo zoning and the stormwater management ordinance, if there's some sort of consistency there, or to Angela's point, have some sort of caveat to say that they're going to be interpreted differently, because if it's going to count as regulated impervious cover for purposes of stormwater, but is it going to count or not for purposes of maximum impervious cover on a lot for building cover or impervious cover generally? And then also just in the definition, it references additional indoor living spaces. I'm assuming you mean things like a building addition that creates new living space, but that could also be interpreted to mean, like if you're finishing a basement, you're actually adding living area, but it's all interior and you're not actually changing the footprint of a building. So I don't think that is the most accurate depiction of what you mean by living spaces. So if we mean something that's going to modify or increase the footprint of a structure, then that should be the language used instead of the creation of indoor living spaces, because you can finish an attic or you can finish a basement that creates living space. It's not going to modify or impact stormwater management purposes.
Very good point.
Hey, Chuck, one question. Swimming pools?
We're going to add that too.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so are we going to count the surface of water as impervious cover, towards the area of impervious cover?
We count the surface of water, correct?
We do not.
No,
Do not, okay.
We do not.
I mean, there's evaporation that occurs,
Yep.
you know?
So,
So that offsets, the amount of evaporation should be equal to the amount of rainfall, more or less.
Not in my pool.
so I've also seen that both ways. And so some of the argument has been count the surface water as impervious cover because overall the pool impedes the infiltration because you're reducing the infiltration of that area. So yes, the water has somewhere to flow, but then because you're excavating and you're putting some sort of impermeable layer on top of that area, you're interrupting the underground flows of water and then that infiltration into that area. So
if your site's on bedrock, you're in trouble. You're entirely impervious.
if we start, yeah. I mean, there's no good way of looking at it. So I get yelled at on a daily basis for counting the surface water of pools as impervious cover. But I don't really care either, one way or the other. But yeah, it should just be defined so that, because that's like the number one question that I get all the time by pool contractors, be like, does this count as impervious? So if that's stated clearly, then that solves a lot of questions that the zoning officer has to answer.
Zero runoff from the pool. You know, when it rains, the water doesn't spill over into the,
What about your
What?
What about your overflow drain?
what?
Your overflow drain.
Debate has officially begun.
There's no drain from the
You
pool.
got to backwash your filter?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in on anything?
The rest of the board is mesmerized with all this discussion.
Between the engineer and the zoning officer, what are we gonna get?
So is this already adopted by other townships in the lower Darby watershed?
So as a part of the MS4 permits, the ordinances are required to be updated. So
I'm sorry, could you repeat your answer, please?
as part of the requirements of the MS4 permit, which all municipalities in this region have an MS4 permit, and one of the requirements is that the stormwater ordinance is updated to be consistent with DEP's model ordinance. And so, yeah, to answer your question, municipalities have, some have already adopted their updated ordinance.
I'm curious about one change or addition to 78-21 on page 8. The requirements shall supersede any conflicting requirements.
Where are you, Lou?
7821C on page 8.
Requirements.
That last italicized red statement. Is it literally the case that there would never be an instance where another ordinance or regulation would need to be taken into account? Opposed to, this is making it automatic, or is this inserted because the DEP or the state requires it?
So this language in red is taken from the county model ordinance, which incorporates DEP's required language.
Got it.
And the county's model ordinance, the language is very similar, if not identical, in a lot of places to the Crum Creek watersheds ordinance, which has, of course, already been approved by DEP under the 167 when they did that. So
I was just curious about it because in effect this is saying there's no municipal ordinance or regulation of any priority importance that's allowed to interfere with it.
I'm not sure it's saying that. I mean, if you read this, it's referring to what I would consider, standards of the township. They refer to inlet spacing, inlet type, collection system design, outlet, all that stuff that is, we have typical standards for. And the way I read this is, if it's
modifying
right,
the prior
exactly.
language, not just a standalone blanket statement.
Right. That makes sense?
Yeah. Lawyers could argue about it, but good enough.
On page 25, the definition of stream buffer. In parentheses, you say see buffer. And when you go to buffer, it says see riparian buffer. So maybe you just add
maybe we
riparian.
just have riparian buffer. Yeah.
Unless do we use buffer?
We use
Do we
stream
use
buffer.
buffer?
Stream buffer is in the ordinance, the term stream buffer.
Right, but do we use buffer? Is buffer used in other places in the ordinance that refers to something other than a riparian buffer? Or a stream buffer, stream corridor buffer?
It's possible, but we'd have to check that.
Yeah, maybe we'll just do a control find on that one and see if it conflicts with anything in that.
Pops up anyplace else.
Yeah, and we need to keep the multiple definitions of
Yeah.
buffers for that purpose, or if we can get rid
Oh,
of them.
there is a definition for buffer. It refers you to riparian.
Riparian buffer.
Yeah,
So all three terms are equal to riparian buffer.
right.
You're thinking of a landscape buffer or something like that, that has nothing to do with a stream.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if there's anything like a landscape buffer that's referred to as a buffer generally, but not a landscape buffer specifically.
If it's in here, it doesn't belong in here.
Yeah, I don't think that there should be a landscape buffer anywhere in this particular ordinance.
I don't think so either.
Oh, in the riparian, there might be a riparian buffer.
Yeah.
Okay, find out where it was here. So I believe I was going to 7831, which is on page 34. All right, and, there's some language, and I think the planning commission can relate to this too. There was some language that was added regarding existing discharges that affect other properties on this. So if you look at 7831, like B there was revised, and also E was sort of revised to talk about that. And we've had some of those circumstances in the past, or concerns about some of those circumstances in the past, so. It's just, I think it's a good thing to keep in there, but, again,
Does this have any kind of an offset distance for discharge to like property lines or something like that?
Not.
That's always an issue we get into. I mean, we say we got to get it back into sheet flow, but I almost prefer to have a real number in there that
Sure.
residents can follow.
an offset distance for what, though? I mean, are you talking about a pipe, or?
Yeah, like a pipe discharge on the property.
Yeah.
Pipes coming off the gutters or something like that, discharging from a property line. Now, that may be a problem where you may have a 10-foot offset, a side yard setback, and the building's there, so. But I'd be just curious if we could, I don't know, put something in there, or language sheet flow or something, people don't understand it, but just something.
Or even just something too, that like you may not terminate a pipe, whether it's a downspout or a sump pump drainage or something else, where you may not terminate that pipe directly at the property line, because then you just get buckets of water flowing directly off your property and onto your neighbors. So yeah, I agree with something like a hard setback number, or something like, half the distance to whatever your minimum yard setback is, like no more than half the distance. So if it's an 8-foot side yard setback, then you couldn't extend a discharge pipe more than 4 feet from that property line, or something like it may not be, directed perpendicular to discharge onto a neighboring property. It has to discharge parallel, so you'd have to put like a bend in the pipe so that it would run kind of along the property lines instead of directly onto the other person's property, something to that effect maybe, to address some of those concerns.
And again, one size is going to fit all in everywhere in the township here, so.
Don't I know it.
I understand what you're getting at.
Radnor's setback is 5 feet.
5 feet.
It was anyhow.
I actually wanted to go back a page onto page 33, so section 78-29. We're changing it from modification to revision of plans, but then 29A still says modification.
Okay.
So I wasn't sure if that should be changed to revision, because then subsection B goes from modification to revision.
Revision, yep, thank you.
Some of that language obviously needs to be cleaned up in here a little bit, but I guess we're kind of looking at the intent and the overall picture here at this point. Um, 7836, which is on page 40, is groundwater recharge, okay? And that has been revamped, I guess, a little bit. It's very similar to what was there, but there's a little more to it and everything. So, and particularly regarding the inability to infiltrate and everything. So, and we run into that a lot too in the township, where people do infiltration testing and there is nothing there. So.
You had that problem at the library, right?
Yeah.
Chuck, can we go back, I'm sorry, to on page 36?
36, Maggie?
Yes. So this is part of our section for general requirements. There's a new subsection R, says the design of all stormwater management facilities shall incorporate sound engineering principles, et cetera, et cetera. The municipality reserves the right to disapprove any design that would result in construction in or continuation of a stormwater problem area. And I wasn't sure, there's no definition per se for what counts as a stormwater problem area. I had just highlighted this as a question mark as to what does a stormwater problem area mean? How is it defined? How is it identified? And I wasn't sure if it was similar to what we discussed earlier about there being like a ground, what was the term we used earlier, but the problem areas that we've identified.
Yeah.
And if that's just gonna be a judgment call based on review of a project or general knowledge of a recurring area of issues.
We'll have to discuss that one because I think you're right. It's kind of vague. Maybe it needs a little more teeth to it and some backup to it if it's been, a problem 3 or 4 times in the past or I don't know, some way to define it a little better than it is now.
Yeah.
This might not be a luxurious example, but if you look at pothole laws, if potholes identified goes onto a register, that's a problem area.
Yeah, it's a good point.
To take that approach
It's a
here.
good point. And again, I go back, we have known chronic areas and those are the easy ones. It's the other ones that are more difficult.
As part of our MS4 permit, we have to keep track of any complaints that come in about, well, that's more for illicit discharge.
Illicit discharge.
Never mind. Yeah, okay, never mind.
All right. Section 7842, so that pertains to riparian buffers and everything. So that was not in the original ordinance. That's on page, or not as robust in the original ordinance, I should say. What page is that on? Pages 54, 55.
Can we go back to 41, page 41?
I'm sorry, Angel?
Can we go back to page 41
Sure.
before we miss that? Modified control guideline number 1, okay? And we state that the REV shall be determined using SCS methodology.
Yes. Which,
I'm just trying to read the rest of it here. I think that was the intent. Maybe it's
I
not
agree.
specifically stated, but okay, that makes sense.
Right. And then we have, if that doesn't work, then we have MCG2, which is 1 inch for each square foot of impervious. And if that doesn't work, then we go to a 1/2 inch. And there's no, I mean, suppose they can't get a 1/2 inch. I mean, is that, what happens then?
so it says you have to,
Contribute money for another drainage problem somewhere else in the town?
it does not say that. But it says the retention
Oh,
value,
you need a waiver. It says at the bottom.
a waiver, but,
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought it said, I think it says someplace where if you can't get the 1/2 inch, but say you get like 0.3, try and do whatever you can.
And all through that whole page 42, there's a reference to section 305. I assume that should be a different section number. There's no section 305 in the code, right?
Yes.
In subparagraphs B and C.
Oh, yeah, in that box, that second box down for like the 1/2 inch, where it says I equals the maximum equivalent infiltration amount that the site can physically accept, or a 1/2 inch, whichever is
Is
greater.
greater, okay. And I see on page 43, you're abandoning double ring infiltrometer? Or is that included in
DEP
manual?
manual, yeah,
Is that the preferred testing you guys look for?
yes.
Okay. You don't allow the old percolation test, right?
We used to,
Yeah,
but we're not going to anymore.
Okay, all right, good.
Sorry, where was that?
43, page 43,
number 2.
paragraph, the second paragraph down from the top.
I had flagged on page 44, subsection 3, it says the Environmental Protection Agency's NEPTIS stormwater program requires some industrial sites to prepare and implement a stormwater pollution prevention plan. That's more just a statement of fact and doesn't have any sort of requirement associated with it. I wasn't sure if there was anything more.
I'll look and see if there was.
It just seems like kind of a
It
vague
depends,
statement
yeah.
about like a DEP requirement.
On page 44.
Like, okay, and
Yeah, I understand.
On page 46. The first red paragraph. It goes right from the 2-year storm to a half inch. It skips over the 1 inch.
Oh, okay, yeah, let's fix that.
Technically, I think that's redundant. I don't know that we're saying the same thing that's already been said before, right? What more?
Okay. I was just gonna point out the riparian buffer requirements.
Okay, go ahead.
That have been added, okay? And then there's, the O and M stuff has been sort of beefed up a little bit too. And that's on,
Is it still 3 inspections over 10 years?
no. Okay, so if you read that, Angelo,
It's a bit more specific.
I fell asleep by it.
so,
Page 60.
that's page 60.
I'm sorry,
Look
before
down
we,
the bottom, annually for the first 5 years,
Okay,
once every 3 years thereafter, and then after the cessation of a 25-year or greater storm.
and they're gonna have to put that money up front?
That's what's being done now, so.
Is it?
Yep.
And don't forget, now is 3 times in 10 years.
Right, I know, so it's gonna
It's
be a
gonna,
lot of money.
it's gonna at least double that, if not triple those
yeah.
inspections.
how is that money being captured then? Because if we're increasing the rate of inspections, then, and we're using a like fund that people are paying into, are we doing the inspections and sending invoices to people, or are we requiring people to like up their ante every so often?
If you read on every review we have, it says contribution of, I think it was 2,500 or something to the
Right.
BMP fund. That's
Right.
what that fund does. It's for inspection, for cover inspection cost for all those facilities over that time period.
Okay, so then everyone who has a BMP is just contributing that one-time contribution that's set by the fee schedule, and that contribution will be increasing.
Now, we're gonna have to look at
Theoretically,
this a little closer because it's a little different and a little harder to calculate than just 3 inspections over 10 years.
Right,
As opposed, now we're doing
25
possibly quite a few.
yeah, so we switched over to, instead of collecting a fund that is, collecting money that goes into a pot of money that goes towards the inspections, we've just switched to like a straight inspection fee. The engineer performs the annual inspection, and then we invoice the property owner for the cost of that inspection. That way that cost is directly associated with the actual time of inspection. So if it's something really basic, like the BMP is a vegetated swale, then the engineer goes out, takes two pictures. Is it, is there erosion? Is it still present? Is it vegetated? Very good. Done. Check. On your way. We use Survey 123, which is the a software. Okay, perfect. So so we've like built out a form for it. The engineer goes out. Everything is pre-populated. BMP number, address. Answer the questions.
Exactly
Take
what
the
we did, yeah.
photos.
Yeah.
And then it populates your report. So then they're only getting an inspection fee for like 30 minutes of an engineer's time, as opposed to something else. And then your larger basins or whatever, then it's, your time is commensurate with your,
And that's not the
type of
intent of the
facility.
ordinance, is to burden the property owner with it, but,
Yeah,
it is their responsibility to maintain it.
we're also testing out, I'll let you know how it goes. We're testing out a self-inspection option. So we've created the Survey 123 as a public option. And then we kind of dumbed it down a little bit for like your basic BMPs. So I'll let you know how that goes. I'm actually presenting at PSATs this year on it. So
Okay.
we'll see.
Interesting.
But if that's something that we need to like look at moving ahead in terms of the fee schedule for how we account for these inspections, there's other ways that other municipalities are doing it, which could be a good conversation. So if that needs to be amended.
Good.
I want to go back to page 52. Regarding the rationale methodology, and I talked to you about this before. I think most of the projects we see are infill developments and engineered designs of seepage bed, and they do recharge calculation based upon SCS, the difference in a 2-year storm. Then they route through that basin using rationale. And invariably, you see a hydrograph that it might be 45 minutes long, 60 minutes long tops. You don't see the 24-hour hydrograph that you get with SCS. And I think we're getting shortchanged as far as rate control goes because of that. So I know Lower Merion, and I know.
Lower Marion doesn't even let you
No,
use the rationale.
and Radnor doesn't let you use rationale at all. Rationale is good for calculating pipe flows and things like that. That has its purpose. But I think in designing stormwater management systems, I think SCS has the best bang for the buck, if you will. And I think we need to. And I know this is boilerplate stuff as far as the way it's written, but
No, but this is the time if we're gonna.
either, we leave it in there and then we just make a statement saying that the, hydrographs for each storm evaluated shall be based on a type 2 rainfall distribution occurring over a 24-hour duration. Keep it like that. Or take it out.
Okay.
200 acres. I mean, we don't have any sites in here that are 200 acres.
I noticed earlier that actually should be crossed, if you go to page 51, I believe we crossed out and said.
5 acres?
5, yeah, but even still, rational, method, definitely,
Yeah, I mean, you may run into some cases where it's very difficult to implement SCS, but I think the town, if we're truly looking to control runoff, I think that's one thing we can do that will be positive, have a positive impact.
I had a question
Going back
about,
to,
I had a question about the maintenance fund, a little new to this part, but so if you're a homeowner, and like Angela was saying, you had to redo your driveway and you replace it seemingly in kind, but it gets permitted as new impervious, are you responsible to contribute to the maintenance fund of a BMP that you put in?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, okay.
Did you do that?
well, first you have to design and install a BMP, and then you pay the fee, and then you get that inspected.
Yes, yeah, I know constantly throughout Ambler and other towns, every new driveway, there's just a hole that's dug and filled with gravel for infiltration.
Yeah. Just wanted to ask, going back to riparian buffers, if that is consistent with the zoning. No specific comment, just want to make sure that if we discuss riparian buffers in zoning, that they're consistent with this ordinance.
Zoning doesn't have a definition for buffer, stream buffer.
Oh, there's nothing in zoning for riparian?
The definition of buffer in here is for
Landscape.
landscape buffers. There might be something in Saldo.
Okay, well, zoning or saldo, riparian buffers should, width and treatment and what you can and cannot do and all of that, only so that we don't create any inconsistencies between the ordinances.
I got one more. Attachment 3.1. Appendix B.
Appendix B, simplified method?
There's a recharge example, volume example. Example, recharge volume. It's a simplified method for between 1,000 and 2,000 square feet. Okay, and when you look at the example, the total is 2,016 square feet. I just thought that was
Rounding
weird.
error.
Yeah.
The math is right. But you have to change the size of the hamper
Yes.
or something.
They wouldn't follow.
Oh, they wouldn't. Yeah, that's a simple, it's just like the example should be reflective of the wording.
So we allow just for an infiltration bed or a dry well. Do we also do rain gardens? Hold on, let me just flip through.
I don't know if a rain garden is addressed here, but I mean, that's certainly a BMP that,
But you'd have to approve, infiltration, right? Well, you don't do perk tests for these, or infiltration tests for these things. Right? For the small one.
Well, yeah. We
So
do.
between 1,000 and 2,000, you have to do an infiltration test. Okay. So it's not simplified.
Oh, so it's not as simplified. Is it possible to use, so like if an applicant were to provide a USGS, soil typology for their, although most of it would probably just come up as like urban,
Yep.
right?
made land.
Yeah. Okay. So then, okay, so if that's the case, what's the benefit of doing the okay, sorry, I'm answering my own questions in my head as I'm asking them. Never mind, we're good. But if we can have, I mean, do we want to consider rain gardens as an option for the simplified, our small
It's
projects?
a matter of a certain amount of volume that infiltrates to your storm.
Yeah.
Or whatever the numbers work out to be. So, yeah, I mean, rain garden can count if it infiltrates.
Maybe we should consider putting rain gardens in our appendix B as a potential simplified.
It'll save them a lot of money as far as inspections go.
And your point, your global point is the easier you make it for people, the more receptive and they'll be able to.
Yeah,
Beat to
and
it.
some people prefer rain gardens because they think that they're asset.
Landscaping.
Asset, native plants and pollinators, and people are interested in that more. And so if they have to go through this whole process and time and expense, maybe they might prefer an option where they can have a beautiful feature on their property as opposed to a pit with stone. Although most people that we do simplified BMPs end up with the infiltration trench because they want to be able to like play soccer on top of it. So, but providing them the option is nice so that you don't have to only have the infiltration trench as an option, given whatever your typology is for your property. And do we also give credit for, heavily wooded lots? Like if we have to take out trees to put in stormwater facilities, I always get complaints about that. It's like counterintuitive that you would take out trees to have to put in stormwater when the trees probably do a good job of
Just as
managing
much,
stormwater
yeah.
themselves.
Yeah. I don't think we
I
give
don't think
credit.
that's,
No.
I think that's just not addressed.
Okay.
Something to
So,
think about for
so
sure.
we don't have like non-structural credits that people could apply.
Not credits. There is some language in here about, designing your site with non-structural BMPs, but like an actual credit saying like, oh, instead of taking out these 5 trees, to your point, to install
Like a
trench.
smaller, like you can do a smaller
but
trench
it's
because
not
you,
that-
yeah.
It's not that specific.
Okay. I know the PABMP manual does have worksheets that account for
Quantify,
that,
Yeah.
but, okay.
Okay.
And nothing changed on the management map, right?
No, that's from the 167.
This is some,
I don't have anything else, John.
that's the buffer areas.
One other little one. On 17, do we need karst for Haverford Township? You can probably delete that. Karst,
Steve, what's-
karst on page 17. There's no karst in the township.
You have, they do not.
It's a geology thing. Yeah.
It's not correct?
So there's no karst in Haverford Township.
Yeah.
It's the right term, but it's not an issue in the town.
Yep.
Other public comment? Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. No, thank you for hearing me. I caught your last meeting.
tell us your name?
I'm sorry, my name's Tim Allen. I live at 11 Glendale Road. This is my wife Linda. We caught your last meeting, and you talked heavily about Claremont and about stormwater control. And since those properties have been built, and they're actually talking about building a third property now, our property's inundated and just ruined with water. Whatever was decided is clearly not working. We've had the township out, we've had the engineer out, but our property and all of our landscaping is being washed away, and all of our basement is flooded. The entire property is in a really bad state. If we could just get the right direction, clearly this probably isn't the forum to bring this up, but if you could point me in the right direction, we really would appreciate it. But whatever was done and whatever was agreed upon at that last meeting, I can tell you, I have a lot of video evidence. I won't bore you with it unless you truly want to see it. But it's really bad, and it's all topical, and it's all coming from the newly built properties that are behind our property. So I told my wife we were going to dinner. I drug her here, so I appreciate you hearing me.
These are the two houses that are already built,
Yes, sir.
and there's 3 more that are proposed?
There's another one that's proposed further down that was demoed recently.
Right.
And you also have the gas station up there, which is also problematic in this whole thing, but most of my water is new from that canopy being taken down and those properties being built. And I'm not one for drama. It is really bad. I don't think we could sell it right now if we wanted to. We're big fans of our backyard. We spend a lot of money out there, and it's virtually useless to us right now. So appreciate being heard. I'm not sure, again, if this is the right forum, but if I could be pointed in the right direction.
Well, they haven't come in yet, but have they got their final approval for the subdivision? That's Caramanica.
Yes. Yes, it is.
I think that we're talking about a different subdivision. This was a previous subdivision. It wasn't the one on Claremont that was, you guys saw with, I think,
But then they build 2 houses adjacent to that property?
yeah.
Okay, and that's the one you're talking about, right?
Directly out my property.
Yeah.
And there was an older house that was recently demoed.
And they're
that I
gonna build
believe
3 houses on there.
There'll be a third, yes.
Well, there'll be 3 more.
Okay.
Not a third. Where
My
the house-
address is 11 Glendale.
Where the house was torn down,
Yes, sir.
that's 3 new lots.
Didn't know that.
Okay.
Strongly oppose any builds until we can straighten out what's going on.
Your address
11 Glendale Road.
and the houses you're speaking about are also on Glendale?
No, they're on Claremont. They're out the back of my property.
So has that gone to the commissioners yet?
No, just to be clear, the subdivision that the planning commission saw, I don't know, months ago, of the one house that was taken down and
Right.
3 houses built there, that has not been finalized yet.
Right.
Okay? It's been approved conditionally approved by the commissioners, but they got to go through, obviously 537, or planning module and everything for Darby Creek. So there's been no permits issued that I'm aware of to
Okay, so
construct the house.
they still have to come in for grading permits?
Right,
Okay.
right.
So at that time, you can take a hard look at what they're proposing to see if there's anything that they can do with that new construction that would help this gentleman.
Yeah, but I think this gentleman's talking about the opposite side of the street. Am I correct?
Directly out the back of my property. 2
He's on-
houses were built by
he's on Glendale.
Caramanica within the last 6 months.
Yeah, it's 4 and 8 though, right? Is it?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's those 2.
On Claremont? Okay.
Sorry, I didn't realize yours is.
It's the gas station on the corner,
Yes,
two
sir.
new houses.
Correct.
And then the house they tore down.
Correct.
They're all in the same row.
Correct.
And you live on Glendale on the other side.
Yes, sir.
Right. You're on the left-hand side of Glendale if you're coming from the shopping center.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's right there.
And I'm willing to collaborate. I'm willing to work with someone. I've got some property that, work that I have to do on my own property as well. But it really, there's nothing I can really do, really. I tried to divert. It's really not working.
Did you not get a letter saying that they were going to subdivide that property?
I didn't. I didn't. I saw it and I knew. And we looked at it as progress, right? It was a beautiful canopy, a beautiful landscape for our backyard. We built a beautiful landscape into it. We understand progress, but we don't understand the amount of water. And again, not being dramatic, I could show you video evidence of just rivers that come from that back property on the Mayan. Wash away all our landscaping and into the basement. Basement's flooded.
When, like I said, the only thing that's left is for them to pull permits for the 3 new houses. They can't do that. It's going to take a little while to get approval for new sewage connections for the 3 houses. But eventually they'll have to come into the township to get permits to build those houses.
Okay.
And at that time, maybe the township engineer could look at the design for what they're proposing and see if they can make an adjustment that will help you with your problem.
I'm not in the civil engineering. I don't see it. I would certainly defer to you experts. I would be concerned about the people adjacent to them who are lower than them as well. Whatever was designed on these 2 properties, clearly not working. I watched it go in. I don't know if it was done right. I'm certainly not blaming you. I can just tell you that when it rains, even a half inch of rain, it's an onslaught of water onto my property topically. So not sure if it's not, I wouldn't say your design's bad. I don't know if it was implemented properly, but something is not working. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Is there anything I should do? Go to codes? Is there anyone I should contact? We had someone out recently, I believe he moved on to Marple Township, the code supervisor, or?
Sir, what I'll do is I'll bring it up with the manager and the person that took the code, Joe's place, the code enforcement officer, and we'll, because I know he's been out there and I know he's been talking with he was talking with the owner of that gas station and everything about some improvements too. So let me follow up on that and we'll have somebody get back to you.
Okay, great. Can we exchange numbers or
Sure.
reach back out to me directly?
Yeah,
Great.
sure. If you want to give me your number, I'll be glad to.
Awesome.
And so just to Angela's point, so the other, that's coming back to us, correct? Oh, no, you're right, we did.
I heard the questions
To the
last time.
commissioners
Go.
yet?
Yes.
And they already approved that one?
Yes.
Okay. So we are just an advisory body that reviews, so in terms of the actual hard engineering that's done by the applicant's engineers and then reviewed by the township, and during construction, we have a construction inspections and those sorts of things. So at this point, it does seem like it's not gonna come back to us any further. So yeah, Chuck is gonna be your best point. So at this point, I would just recommend coordinating with the township on remediation. And if there's any, and the other one that's gonna come in because it's a subdivision plan, it has to go through final inspections for everything. So but that's further down slope from you, or is that up, is it higher?
I think it's probably down, yeah. When
Okay.
you're talking about where the third property.
The one where the new houses
Yeah,
are gonna
I
go?
don't know, it might be. It probably is uphill for me.
Okay.
Looking at it, yeah.
Okay.
So maybe there's something you can do there. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, at this point, you'll have to coordinate with township staff with your concerns and see what they're able to help you with.
Okay, appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank
Chuck,
you.
is this the one with
Thanks for sitting through all this too, I appreciate it.
I was mesmerized, actually. It's awesome.
And I hope there is someplace open for dinner. Big time. Yeah, thank you for your patience.
Hey, Gary, are we getting, when the developer comes in with an application for land development, are they giving you copies of the receipts for notifications they send out? They're supposed to send out certified mailed to adjacent property owners.
I've not been getting those now.
Okay, that's,
Okay.
that's something
Make a
that,
note of that, okay.
that you should be getting
The developers
before they
supposed to-
come before
okay.
us.
Okay.
It's important. That concludes our agenda for tonight. Is there any new business that any, or good and welfare that anybody could bring to our attention?
I understand that the township hired a new planning director.
Yes, I know.
You know her?
Do.
What is her name?
I don't know if I'm allowed. Is it public information?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I think they mentioned it last commissioners meeting.
Did they?
She starts May 1st.
Is the new planning director public knowledge yet?
I'm not aware of it. I just found out today that the individual was selected.
Oh, okay.
So I don't even know the name, but I just told there were positions filled and they should be starting May 1st.
Gotcha. Okay. I'll tell you offline.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second?
And seconded, all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Be well, stay safe.